Yeah, there we go. Cool. That works out. All right. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for joining us this evening. We give everybody 2 minutes. Just introduce yourself and tell us why you're running.
Okay, I am State Representative Valarie Hodges, and I represent right now District 64, running for State Senate District 13. And I am termed out, and Senator Rogers Pope is retiring from that seat, so I'm running. I want to continue the hard work that I've been doing for my constituents in District 64 and the rest of Livingston Parish. I am a true conservative, I'm a Republican, and I have a proven track record to show that.
Okay, we'll jump into it. When you're talking about wanting to move from the House to the Senate, what are some of the successes that you have had in the House, and what sort of experience are you looking to bring? I'm trying not to use the word sell again. What experience are you looking to bring to the Senate, and how are you marketing that, there's a word, to your constituents?
Okay, well, I'll start. One of the things that when I was elected in 2012, the first bills I got involved in working on is human trafficking, because I didn't realize what a problem that we have in that area. Human trafficking is the largest criminal industry in the world. It's bigger than the drug industry. And so I got involved in that, and Louisiana went from being last in the fight against human trafficking to number one. I co-chaired the task force on that. I am still on the human trafficking task force. We worked with Homeland Security, with state police, and we took our laws to really being number one in the nation against the fight for human trafficking. And we still have a lot of work to do. There's things that I want to do, but I didn't feel like that we could get that passed. One of the things, that was the first thing I started working on. And then 2014, I started asking questions about the Comite Diversion Canal, and everybody said, oh, that project's dead. That's never going to happen. You're crazy for even talking about it. And as I went and began to, I talked to the Corps of Engineers and asked them what they were doing, and they said basically nothing, because it was DOTD's fault. So I went and talked to DOTD. DOTD said it's ARBC's fault. And so I went and talked to ARBC, and they said it was everybody else's fault. So I started a task force. I passed a piece of legislation and started the Comite Diversion Canal Task Force. And the purpose of that was to discover the impediments of that canal and what was wrong, because that was in 2014. I vividly remembered in 1983 when all of this was underwater. And I said, it's not a matter of if we have another catastrophic flood, it's when. And I never thought it would be in my lifetime, that it would be 2 years after that, after we started the task force. But we discovered Congressman Graves was on my task force, Senator David Vitter was on the task force, and we actually did find out what the impediments were. And despite being told constantly no, and Representative Ivey probably remembers this, everybody thought it was crazy. That's never going to happen. And now it is happening. It is fully funded. It is 50% complete. And the way, how that impacts us is that FEMA told us all along the way, once it's fully funded and 50% complete, that we're going to redraw the floodplain maps. And that affects all of us. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the 2.0 rating that FEMA is doing, which nobody can really understand how that's going to affect our flood insurance. But they are working on redrawing this floodplain management, the floodplain plan. And we started, when I went out there a few weeks ago, went out there 6 months ago, a year ago, and it is amazing to see the progress. It is actually going to happen. They say in the next year and a half, it will probably be complete. And that's a major hurdle. It reduces flooding in the Zachary area 7 feet, in Central about 5 feet, in Watson 3 feet, and in this area 1 foot 2 inches. And so we know that the flood that we had in 2016, my home flooded. I got 4 feet of water, and like a lot of people in this room flooded, and all of these businesses just about flooded. But what the Comite does, the impact that it has, it was never meant to be the silver bullet. When the Corps designed it, it was to be with 5 other projects, and one was the Darlington Reservoir, and the clearing and snagging of the Comite and AME, and the different things. So I passed a bill, I believe it was 2019, to allow clearing and snagging of the Comite River. I led an expedition of about 20 men down onto the Amite River to see where the weir was collapsed. And we were in the sheriff's boat, and on one side where the Amite River diversion canal is, the depth was 25 feet. And so the deputy took us, he said, now watch this. And he moved about literally 15 or 18 feet in the boat, and the Amite River is 4 feet deep right there. So that water has no way to get out. So one of the things that we started pushing for in 2019 was to get that done. So if you drive down Central Thruway, where Representative Ivy lives, you can see they are actively working on and clearing and snagging the co-meet, getting that out of the way in preparation for the co-meet diversion canal to be finished. And the next thing, we're waiting on the permit for the Amy River to get their permit. And you may know, you don't know if they've got it yet, but we're waiting on that. The money is there, so we're just waiting on the permit to get that done. So it's a comprehensive program. Excuse me. And this year, as we went through the task force, kept talking about the Darlington Reservoir, that has to be done in conjunction with these other projects. And literally, I was sent word that you're going to get hurt if you keep pushing this project. And I was like, why? But there was a lot of political reasons. And so DOTD said, look, there's a project that we can do, and it would be create 8 to 10 weirs, smaller weir systems in the abandoned gravel pits up in St. Helena. And so they helped me write a resolution, ask for DOTD to do this weir system and these structures that during flooding, the water would be detained as it comes down from Mississippi. Because one thing I found out when I redid the statewide floodplain management plan, it had not been done. It had not been updated since 1955. And I don't know, Representative Ivey, you were there at the time. I don't know if you remember this, but I asked DOTD if I could have those, their floodplain management plan that they had. And they brought me 2 big blue books about this long and this wide, and I went down to the well with one of the in each hand. Everybody said, "You look like Moses down there." And I was like, "This is unacceptable that we have half of the water from the United States drains through the Mississippi River in this area, and we have not updated our floodplain management." And so we were able to. I got that passed, and out of that came basically the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, and the governor did that through executive order, and that is what that group, the same group that I had passed the legislation for, is what now is known as the Louisiana Watershed Initiative. So that's been a main focus of what I've been doing in flooding, and I believe that is super, super important. That's the main thing that people care about right now, because and we hadn't had to really worry too much about it we need rain, and we were praying for rain, but not that much rain. So it's but that's one of the things that I think that I'm looking forward to. That's one of the impetus that pushes me why I want to run. I want to be in the Senate, because that project was abandoned. Nobody believed that could be done. But you have to have somebody that's going to push and champion a project to say, this is what I'm focusing on, and it's going to get done, and believe in it. And it is getting done. So that's one of the major things that I wanted to talk about. The other, let's see. And I just want to tell you all a little bit about me, because I probably should have done that in my intro. But my husband and I were missionaries for 18 years, and we served in Guadalajara, Mexico. And we came back and started a church on Rushing Road. We pastored that church for 12 years. And we're a small business owner. We own North Star properties and homes, and we flip houses. And so I love doing that. That's our paying job. So we know that, Representative Ivey, you do not do this for the money. And I just want to say he's one of the hardest working people that we have in the legislature. He works sometimes all night long for days at a time, and just has one of the most knowledgeable people in the legislature. So I appreciate him. But we have great schools here in Livingston Parish. All 5 of my daughters are involved in the schools here. One of my daughters works for Livingston Parish School Board. 4 of them attend Live Oak High and Live Oak Junior High. So we love our schools out here. We're very proud of our schools in Livingston Parish, and that's why a lot of people move here, is because of our schools. So that's something for us to be really proud of. One of the things that I passed a bill, 2 bills actually, that I'm excited about. It was called the Protect Teachers Act. Have y'all familiar with that bill? And one of the things, as I was going, what sort of was the impetus for that bill, as I went around meeting with principals and teachers before session started, I found out it wasn't just the pay raise that they have concerns about is the safety and what's going on in the classrooms, because we've had so many people move in to Livingston Parish, and what we see in other schools that they're afraid. A lot of teachers are afraid, not so much here. There are some here in Livingston Parish, but across the state, that if they intervened in a fight, that they could be sued. And so we just called it qualified immunity for teachers. And so the bill passed that if they intervene in a fight, they cannot be sued criminally or held liable civilly. And so that gives that protection to them if they do intervene in a fight and someone gets hurt. Another bill that I passed that I was real excited about, it was authorizing the Bible in grades 9 through 12 as an elective for history and literature. And I think that is very important. As I went through the process, I was shocked to find out, as I did research, that 80% of teenagers had never opened a Bible and read the Bible. And that's what a lot of that, I think, is evidenced by what we see in our society, is that there's no what's the word, foundation for what moral behavior is. And if you think about, there's 1,250 references in just Shakespeare to the Bible. And our own Constitution talks about God. And so when we're teaching them the Constitution, one of the things that I see Ron Morris here, and we talk about the bills that I pushed for and fought hard for, was those patriotic social studies standards. Because when I guess it was revelatory for me during 2020, and we saw during the Black Lives Matter riots, and I was like, there was a lot of college students out there doing that, and I'm like, where's this coming from? Hating America and spitting on the flag. And I was like, this is American students. This should not be. And so that is one of the reasons that I filed those bills, to say kids have to learn the Declaration of Independence, not one semester in 4th grade and then another semester in 7th grade. In the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and learn about the Holocaust and World War II and what it cost us for freedom in this country. And so I worked with our superintendent and some of the leaders and said that this has to be systematically from kindergarten, age appropriate, to 12th grade, for them to learn these documents, that when someone tells you America is a bad country, they need to understand what our forefathers suffered, and when they said, we pledge our lives, our sacred honor, our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor, and most of them, it cost them that. And so to understand what it took to found the greatest country in the world, I think is foundational to having great students who grow up and are patriotic and love this country, not teaching them to hate America. That's what CRT does. It teaches them to hate America and hate each other. And that's the opposite of what we need. And I have fought that on many levels. But now we went from, I'm so excited that I believe it was last year, that Superintendent Brumley was on Fox News, and they were talking about how now Louisiana has the best social studies standards in America. Is that right? And he has done a fabulous job. And so I think that as we see this leftist woke movement encroaching, and so many people don't want to be called names, they don't want to be called racist or anything like that. I lived on the mission field for 18 years. I lived in a mud hut, and I lived with people of other races, and so it doesn't bother me if you call me a racist, because I know I'm not. And that's what we need, is people who will stand up to that leftist movement that is a socialist movement that wants to make America into a socialist country. And I'm not just gonna sit back and do nothing about it. And so one of the things that we have to take incremental steps to push back against that and protect our children's minds. I'm big into education, and I think that fosters teaching them those founding documents and teaching them about the Holocaust and tyranny, and what does tyranny look like. Don't think it can't ever happen again, because it can. And that's one of the reasons that I stood against the COVID lockdowns, because I said, this is not the government's place to close churches and businesses and schools. The First Amendment says we have freedom of worship. Freedom it says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion and everybody stops there, right? Who can tell me what's the last part of that? Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion somebody tell me. or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And that is important that we put that is in that First Amendment. You cannot prohibit me from exercising my freedom to worship. And that's what was unconstitutional. Now we're seeing during the whole time, we closed churches, we closed businesses, we closed schools, and people didn't know what to do. But we stood up in Louisiana and we said, we're not going to comply with that because it is a breach of our constitutional rights. And now the courts have all ruled, it took 2 years, but they ruled that that was encroaching again on our constitutional rights. So I was very proud of the pastors that stood up and of the businesses that stood against that. And that because I believe in freedom. I know what communism does. We go to Cuba and we ministered in Cuba and we see what communism, the impact that it has, the poverty and what people under that kind of oppression live in. And so that's one of the reasons that I feel very strong about faith, freedom, and family, that we've got to foster that. It doesn't just happen. You teach that. That's a principle that we have to teach. And I believe it's very important. And we are teaching that. And we can't do a lot too much. I don't think we can do too much about that, is what I'm trying to say. And so you think about in higher ed, I had a bill, and I don't know if you remember this, Mr. Morris, but it said, I filed it this year, right, been last year too, but all I ask is tell me what you're spending on DEI and CRT. That's all we want to know. What are you spending? What do you want to accomplish? And how do you measure success? And I was shocked at that's pretty simple, right? If you're spending money, all we want to know is how much, the state's money, and what do you want to accomplish, and how do you measure success? And I was very surprised at the reaction. And I was called a racist, and tables were banged on, and so it didn't pass because of that. But those are things that we have to look at. They are accountable. The education department is accountable to us as legislators, and we should know that. So guarding children's minds is so important. Then we had the woke stuff that we were fighting, and we passed those 3 bills. One was teachers cannot teach sexual orientation in the classroom. We passed that, and the governor vetoed it. And we had not mutilating children until they're 18, and we passed that, and the governor vetoed that. And so those bills got vetoed. We tried to have a veto override session, and we couldn't. We didn't have enough votes, which is sad that we didn't have enough votes for that. But next year, I believe, will be a turning point in Louisiana. I believe we're going to have a true conservative governor, and it is important that we have a true conservative legislature, Senate especially, because Senate is where all the good stuff goes to die. I had bills on illegal immigration multiple times, and I knew when John Alario sent it to Jude, it's dead. And that's what they would, that was intentional. And I don't believe we'll have that under a good Republican governor and a true conservative Speaker of the House and Senate President. And I think that's very important. That's one of the reasons that propels me to fight, that I want to be in there to support that. I want to serve under that. It's been very difficult to serve under a very liberal Democrat governor. And so those are some of the things that, legislation that I've done. One of the things, I know you're all familiar with it, and I won't talk about it but just a second, but y'all are all familiar with the fact that we passed a bill on communist China and Russia and Iran. It's a foreign adversary bill. Y'all all know about that bill, right? Everybody in here? Because, raise your hand if you know about that bill. Just about everybody. And so I passed a bill when I found out that communist China is literally buying land all over, not just Louisiana, the nation. And I kept saying for a couple of years, well, why isn't the federal government doing something? And my son worked for President Trump for 3 years. President Trump tried to do something about it. That's one of the reasons he's not in office now. And hopefully he will get reelected. But, our founding fathers were so brilliant when they fashioned our Constitution that if the federal government overreaches, then they give that to states' rights. And we can do something about it. So I wrote a bill that literally stops foreign adversaries, which is Russia, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, China, and Venezuela, from buying any land in Louisiana. And as we went through the process, it was quite shocking. I got on Mother's Day when I was studying for the bill, I got a call from somebody in Houston. And they said, I want you to know they're going to bus in people from all over to protest your bill. And I thought it was a joke. I thought it was somebody trying to scare me. And I was like, I just blew it off. And so when I got to committee meeting the next day, they really did. I mean, they just accosted me in the hall, and the sergeant at arms had to, clear away and get me in the door. Well, then, so it passed. When we went to the Senate, I got a call that morning and said that there was going to be hundreds of people that were going to show up to protest my bill, and that I was going to be called a xenophobic, that I was going to be sued by the ACLU, and that I got death threats. And I called my son and I said, do you think that would they really kill me over this bill? And Josh said, well, I said, because I don't want to leave the girls without a mom. And he said, well, Mom, we faced machine guns. They put machine guns in our face. Barry can tell you this because he came down and visited us. The federales would stop us and put machine guns in our faces and make us get out of the truck while they searched our truck. And I said, I don't want to leave the girls without a mom. He said, well, do you love them more than you love me and Kelly? I was like, no, but that was for Jesus. I know Jesus was protecting us. And he said, well, Jesus is going to protect you and they're not going to kill you. But it was a hard decision, to get in that car. It was the longest ride. And it was funny because my assistant, I was telling her this yesterday, and she goes, she said, you tell everybody I was really calm. She said, I was shaking inside. I never said a word, but we didn't know. But when we got there, it was a circus atmosphere. They filled the halls. They were on the front Capitol, and the state police had to get me on the governor's elevator, take me down through the tunnels and through the back, and they stood on both sides and behind me. And the bill passed. And when it did, they started screaming and hollering. Some of them had to be drug out. And it was very eye-opening to see that it was not one word on the news about that. Not one news report. I mean, you can have 5 gay and transgender people on the front steps protesting, and they report that, but hundreds of Asian people are out there, and they don't even say one word. And so it passed. So now what happens is it went into effect August the 1st, and if one of our foreign adversaries buys land, whether it's, Louisiana is the gateway to America with our ports and our industry, our petroleum plants and all that. But our farmland, I found out they bought land to the north and south of Barksdale Air Force Base. They were golf courses. And so they bought that. They own Sargento Cheese, Smithfield Foods, all kind of stuff I found out as I went through the process. But as of August 1st, if one of our foreign adversaries buys land, the Attorney General can go and seize that land and take the proceeds and give it to veterans, because it's veterans who sacrificed their lives for our country and for our state. And I was real excited and that the governor signed it. And those are things that is incrementally, I think we have to start pushing back. And when I found out, Chris Holton from the Center for Security Policy told us that they tried to pass this all over the United States in different places, but Louisiana is a handful of states that have passed, and even Texas could not get it passed because there was so much blowback. And as Barry talked about the lobbyists sometimes, but this wasn't really even about lobbyists. It was about the Chinese Communist Party. But those are some of the reasons that, that I guess where my fight comes from, that I'm fighting for the future of our children. And Representative Ivey understands the tax procedure. We have to redo something. We have to redo our tax base and get rid of our state income tax. But the rest of it, you can't just get rid of state income tax. The rest of the tax setup has to be reworked too. And those are things that, like, my son doesn't live here because there's no job here for him that he would do. He graduated from the Naval War College, and there's not anything here for that. But there are over 200,000 people have left our state and to look for jobs in other places, in like Florida and Texas and Tennessee. And so that's one of the things that we have to do. I believe our state is at a crossroads, a turning point, really. If we can get a good Republican governor, a true conservative legislature, there's so much that we can do to bring businesses who wanted to come here, but because of our tax structure did not. They said, no, not in Louisiana. It's just too much. We have the highest taxes in the nation. And so with inflation under Obama and Joe Biden, under that, the way of inflation has exploded. And with our taxes, people are struggling. And my husband and I, we're working class. We have we flip houses for a living, and that's not easy. That's not an easy job to do, but I love it. That's what we do. But the taxes that we have to pay are astronomical, and so we need to do something about that. So anyway, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank the bookstore for opening this place. I didn't even know this was here, and thank you all for being here.
If you want to You still have about 5 minutes if you'd like another question, or if you'd at least like, I know you have somewhere to be. If you want to tell people how to get in touch with you, if you want to wrap up.
Okay. Well, you can look on my Facebook page. It's Valarie Hodges for Senate. And my website is valariehodgesforsenate.com. And I just want to ask for your vote. I am a true conservative, and I have a record of that. You can look. I voted to lower taxes. It didn't pass, but I have voted to lower taxes. I did not vote to increase our expenditure limit, to bust a cap. Our budget has gone from $25 billion with a B under John Bell Edwards to $46.5 billion in 8 years. That is unsustainable. That we can't. That's why we're paying so much when we buy things, and in our state income tax, our federal income tax, and we're just taxed to death. And we need to do something about that. And I believe that we will be able to do something about that. So I just want to, again, it's Valarie Hodges for Senate.com. Valarie Hodges for Senate is my Facebook page. And I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.